Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing Throne of Jade, written by Naomi Novik. It's book 2 in the Temeraire series, and I really like this book. I loved the first book, and this book is just as enjoyable, just as strong. Here's the book. This version of the book is the first edition hardcover, so I got this from a charity book sale. And I've got a few of the books from the book sale, and the rest I get from the library. And after I read through this series, I'm going to need to find a home for these books, the ones I've got on my shelves, because I really can't afford to keep so many books on my bookshelves. And this being first edition, I love to find it a really great home, so I've just got to find a home for it. I'm not sure who I can give it to, but I'll think about that in the future. This book is just amazing because it opens up this whole world even more. Because in this book, we have our main characters going to China, and we just have little hints about China throughout the first book in the series. Nothing much really, but when you see the whole culture that's in this book, the whole world that's shown to us when they go to China, that's just amazing. It's so colourful, so vibrant, so vivid, described so well, and it's so different to what we see in England in the first book. I thought this was an amazing addition to this series. In this book, the Chinese have already learned that the British have one of their imperial dragons. In book 1, the British forces, led by Will, got a dragon egg, and when it hatched, Will bonded with the dragon, and they find out that it's an imperial dragon, but also an imperial dragon that's interbred with a celestial dragon, and makes it even more special. The Chinese government, Chinese emperor, doesn't like the fact that England has a dragon that's so special. So a prince has come over to get that dragon and take it home. Temeraire doesn't want to leave Will, and Will doesn't want to break the bond with Temeraire. So how are they going to get this dragon home if the dragon doesn't want to go? That's the biggest hurdle they have to face early on in this book. There's a lot of to and fro going on between the Chinese prince and also the British government. And we've got someone from the government who's getting involved and doesn't really understand dragons that much. So he's making a bit of a mess of the whole negotiation phase between England and China in this first part of the story. But eventually they decide that they'll send both Temeraire and Will to China, and they'll see what happens there. And that's where we leave England, and we get on a boat and we start the journey to China. The journey to China is long, but it's also interesting in certain ways. So while it's not a fast-paced section of the book, we have a little bit of action, we have an attack, and I won't go into detail about the attack, so there's a bit of action there early on the journey, but a lot of the journey is about this relationship between the people from England on the ship and also the Chinese delegation, the prince and his handlers and other people that are travelling with him. And that's very interesting in the book, because you just wonder what's going on there. There's a bit of intrigue on the ship. There's also a bit of intrigue going on and a bit of mistrust and a bit of angst going on between the aviators that are on the ship, and the aviators are Will and his crew with Temeraire, and naval officers on the ship. They don't seem to like each other and trust each other. There's a bit of tension going on between them. When you add that going on with the tension between the Chinese people on the ship and the British people, it's like a boiling pot. And you just wonder what spark is going to set things off on this ship. And a few things do happen, but things happen in different ways. We do get some situations that create tension and increase the tension on the ship. Then we get other things that seem to have them almost coming to terms with each other and decreases the tension a little bit. That's quite an interesting mix, and it makes all these characters seem very real, and it makes just a whole mix of things on the ship seem very real as well. And it's written quite cleverly, in my opinion, because there's certain key things that happen on this journey that make you wonder who you can trust and who you can't. And also you get some tension between some main characters that you think are friends, and they have different points of view on certain things that are going on in this world, such as slavery. For example, Will doesn't like slavery, but Riley, who's the captain of the ship, and Riley was Will's second-in-command in Book 1, when he was in the Navy still. Riley's parents, his family, are in the slave trade, and they have a bit of tension about that, and a bit of tension about other things going on as well. So it's interesting to see that mix on this ship. The real brilliance of this book is when they get to China, and the author just creates this whole setting of China in this book, and it's quite amazing. The dragons are treated so differently than they are treated in England. The dragons are free, basically. They walk around the streets. They write. They create artworks. They're revered in different ways, and they even buy their own food and have their own food. They're employed in different tasks, and they're almost given the rights of humans in China. And that's really interesting to see, and I found it quite heartwarming. And I thought it was such an eye-opener, because we just get a change in Will's perception of England to the rest of the world. He admits to himself that he thought the dragons in England were treated the best in the world, and he now realises that's not true. He can see just how happy and how free the dragons are in China. Also, Temeraire comes to see this, and bear in mind, Temeraire is quite intelligent, and he's soaking up all these different things in China. And he's learning to write himself, and he's learning the fact that he's treated differently in England than these dragons are in China, and he's coming to resent that. So as this book goes on, when they're in China, we're wondering what's going to happen at the end. Is Temeraire going to stay in China because he's freer there, or will he go back to England? We're not really sure, and that's a question that's on my mind when I was reading this, and I thought that was really well written, because that growth in Will and Temeraire's characters, that growth is really special, and it's pivotal to this book. And I'm wondering if it's going to be pivotal to the rest of the series as well. The politicking and the intrigue when they're in China, that increases as well. And that adds a whole different atmosphere to the story. And I found that quite special, because this story is not one that's meant to be fast-paced, well, this book anyway. The first book in the series had a lot of fast-paced action. This book, not so much. But it sets the scene in different ways. We have a lot of intrigue, a bit of espionage going on. We have a little bit of action at the end, a few action scenes at the end, but they seem to be tucked very tightly at the end. But it's that atmosphere of the intrigue and that suspense about what's going to happen with these characters, what's going to happen with Temeraire. That's what really creates this book. And just giving us China in the book at that time, the culture, the world, the setting that the author creates of China in this story, that makes this book so special. And just two other tidbits about this book. Temeraire gets a bit of a love interest in this story, and also he meets his mother. Because bear in mind, Temeraire was an egg that came from China, and he was a mix of Imperial Dragon and Celestial Dragon, and he gets to meet his mother. That's very interesting to see how he reacts when he sees his mother for the first time. And also with that love interest he has, how he acts about that. It's quite sweet in a way, the way he reacts, and the way he talks about that with Will. And the bond between Will and Temeraire in this book gets stronger and stronger, and that's also great to see in this story. Riley is the captain of the ship that's taking Temeraire and Will and the crew and the Chinese delegation back to China. Riley was Will's second officer in the Navy in the first book, before Will bonded with Temeraire and went to the aviators. Riley's an interesting character. He's quite complex. He's good as a character in my opinion, and he's very real. He seems very real because he has a different point of view to Will on certain things. So even though they're really good friends, their friendship is tested in different ways, and that made this whole book seem really real, and the two characters seem so much more real. And I like Riley as a character because he has a lot of light and shade, a few ups and downs, and he's not a perfect character, but he's not an imperfect character either. And I think that Riley, well, I hope that he stays in this series for a bit longer, that we see more of him, because I'd like to see some more character growth in him, and I'd like to see Riley expanded a bit more in this series. GRANBY is one of the people on Will's crew, on his flight crew with the dragon. We met him in book 1, and in book 1 he started off as being a bit of a vile character. he didn't like Will. He resented the fact that Will came from the Navy and he was given a dragon straight away, because most aviators have to wait 5 or 6 years in England before they get a dragon. So he resented Will and was really nasty to him. Then he turned around, and when he turned around, he becomes a very positive character and almost one of Will's biggest supporters in the aviators. And that change of heart, that character growth, I thought was really special and just made GRANBY just seem more real. Because at the start he was this kind of one-sided character where he was just nasty, nothing else. But now he's just got more light and shade in him. It feels more well-rounded, and he's agreeable, disagreeable, all different things, and just feels more real. And I'm glad that this character grows so much in this series and in this book, and we get to see a lot more of him in this book, and I thought that was quite special and well written. YONGXING is the Imperial Prince that goes to England to get the dragon back, to get Temeraire back. He's cleverly written because you assume that he's up to no good. He's got these plots and schemes going on in the background. You just assume that at certain times in the book. But then at certain times you're wondering, are my assumptions right? Is he really that bad? Because he seems to be doing some really nice things for Temeraire and being nice to Will at certain times. So you're kind of wondering about his motivations through certain parts of this book. Even though in the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, he's just playing games, he's being nice, just trying to play games, but he's really in the background plotting and scheming still. So it's an interesting character and very cleverly written, and all these things go through your mind as you're reading the book about this character. Well, it did for me anyway, and I thought that was just a great sign that this character was able to make me think so many different things at different times throughout the book. This book, being the second book in the series, is just as strong as the first book. I really enjoyed this read, and I just really want to get stuck into more books in this series, and Naomi Novik is turning into one of my favourite fantasy authors at the moment. I rate this a 4.5 out of 5. Again, it's almost a perfect book. I just thought that some of that journey from England to China did go on a little bit too long, even though I thought there's a reason for that. It gave us a bit more time to get to know certain characters and see that intrigue and a bit of suspense going on between the prince and Will. I just thought it went a little bit too long, a bit too much, and didn't give us as much time in China as I would have hoped. Even though the author really presents China quite well in the book, I'd like to see more of that. So I thought it was a bit of a shame that it seemed a bit imbalanced in that aspect, but almost a perfect book. As I read through this series, I'll do a book review of each book and put that video up on my channel. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. There's also a fantasy playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.